Canis growls and pushes my left hand again, turning my attention from the holofield screen back to my tesseract vision. We have entered the hidden _blade, which is a fortress dimension guarding access to the rest of the city. Just in time, as 100 Drukhari vessels arrive from different pathways and begin launching thousands of advanced Voidraven bombers, and they are actually dangerous, especially the weapon called Void_Mine, which is quite a match for my corvettes. The Mind Impulse unit goes into overdrive as I rapidly capture all of these bombers, but a single mine passes through and envelops the 666 number corvette into a barrier field. In an instant, a secondary warhead releases a particle of dark light which destroys everything inside the barrier, including my poor corvette. The crew is safe in my tesseract though, so at least it's not a total loss. Perhaps I shouldn't test fate and use that hull number again. I clench my fist and the entire Dark Eldar fleet gets moved inside the labyrinth, and its crew gets lined up in ordered rows for my later perusal. That's an Archon. Now this is an excellent barter piece. Going by how many enemies the Dark Eldar have in the galaxy, everyone will bid on this guy, just to flay and crush him alive for decades. You lost a ship, again. Ludvius mutters in a faint tinge of admonishment. I just wave a hand in dismissal and focus on the battle. The Imperium attacked this place about 7,000 years ago and lost much more. They didn't return afterwards. I don't intend to return either, because there will be nothing left. A new wave of enemies arrives, hundreds of Ravager gunships, so nimble they can dodge defensive missiles and multi-lasers. They cannot dodge me, and thus they land in a stasis labyrinth for later analysis. Thousands of Razorwing jet fighters pass right through the Tyrannid blockade of the webway, to attack our fleet from behind, so nimble and agile they can dodge the Tyrannid jaws and bioplasma weapons, and even manage to fire a few shots of Dark Lance at my battle barge, before they are captured as well. Another Archon was leading this charge, which doesn't surprise me. All Archons lead from the front, or they get strangled in their sleep by their own cabal. We enter a region called Korspur, formerly the residence of rich nobles, now mostly in ruins. Our batteries burn what's left of it, including impoverished nobles and thousands of homunculi labs or witch cults. Then we pass through the Sec_Magra, a city housing yet another billion Dark Eldar living in poverty and misery. Their misery ends by the time our fleet exits the city, flames and plasma ending their suffering and returning their wretched souls to hell. However, the next section of Camorra is well defended, a place called Bone_Middens, house of the richest witch cults and their arsenal of bioweapons and sorcerous biomachines. I immediately seal a dozen webway exits with Tyrannid bioships, reducing the chance for escape or reinforcements. Altars of bones and skulls decorate every intersection, most of them human bones, for whatever reason. Don't worry, the day of retribution is here, and burns to have a heated argument for human rights. There are also thousands of coliseums and arenas, filled with gladiators and beastmasters, as well as millions of mutated beasts and a billion Dark Eldar spectators. They are all invited to the fireworks display, and cannot refuse. Perhaps 40,000 of the gladiators are human or Eldar, and they disappear in my labyrinth, where I notice with surprise a few hundred Astartes of every legion, and even a Primarch, the crazy swordsman named Khan. This guy must be really insane, coming willingly to the dark arenas just for a chance to butcher Dark Eldar in revenge, one at a time. I mean, I was here too, for much the same reason, but I did it with a big fleet and had a godling on my side. And even with every advantage I have, it is not easy. An entire army of incubi and succubi supported by more pain engines and hundreds of defense platforms resist our assault, until I drop a dozen Tyrannid bioships just on top of them. Those bioships are also filled with millions of predatory organisms, hungry for any kind of biomass. Takes a whole day, and the Eldar lose a couple cruisers anyway, such potent are those Dark Lance batteries. Their crew are saved by my labyrinth, or else the Avatar might break the alliance too soon. I didn't sense their soul get devoured by the enemy. You have my thanks, Astartes. The Avatar whispers in my mind. Not problem, just keep an eye for Archon Vect. Don't want our fleet to be stuck in some temporal flux mine or get hit with prismic dimensional mirrors. Then I will have to release my other assets and the webway will be gone. I warn him in return. I'm not sure if he believes me, but I do have an enslaved Catan just waiting for bloodshed. Problem is, I'm not certain I can stop my Crimson God after I set him loose. Care will be taken, human. Let's move on, and you unleash another firebomb in our wake. Don't pollute the webway with unleashed Tyranids. The Avatar demands once most of the enemy forces are scattered and flee towards the Tyranids. Some of these Drukhari are fast and strong enough to make it out, enough though millions of Hormagaunts and whatever other creatures are out here. We pass into the next dimension, and the Exterminatus obliterates the witches in their arenas. Here is the middle_darkness, sort of civilian sector full of brigands and assassins. Our batteries set them right, and turn them to the light. After this, we finally arrive at High Kamara, the place of power for the Dark Eldar. The entire East seems to be waiting for us, billions of troops and carnage engines, mutated beasts and 10,000 ships of every size. We are completely outnumbered, and outgunned, or so it seems. I drop Tyranids ships in 50 places, all to the sides of the awaiting armies, and keep only 100 bioships in reserve. The Tyranid silence engulfs the city and quells most of their foul wards and dark magic, and thus I launch 2 vortex torpedoes, one into their front lines and one behind the enemy lines, right at the edge of the nearest spire, one covered in the strongest dimensional shield I have ever seen, even able to block the Tesseract. A few seconds after, I start kidnapping the bigger Drukhari ships as fast as I can, denying them their strongest assets. 5 more Archons are now captured, plus 98 battleships. Mines detonate in their place, as to confuse anyone where the ships are gone, but I suspect neither the Avatar of Cain, nor my friendly wolf are fooled. The Tyranids howl in hunger and plow straight into the waiting biomass, ripping into the Dark Eldar armies and crunching on their bodies in ravenous hunger. Tyranids are always hungry. The dimensional mirror defending the spire is slowly breached by the expanding warp rift, and demons of 1,000 types now flood Kamara's richest quarters. Of course, those rich nobles and archons had their private armies and pain engines and thousands of mine and traps, but the Immaterium is without end and will never run out of demons. The Drukhari cruisers and bombers still in the air struggle to split their fire in between the 3 attacking forces, and me and the Eldar are the most distant and less immediate threat. Warp weapons. They should be forbidden. The Avatar claims in a disgusted voice. See? The Geneva Convention is very close already. I flick a melter torpedo deep inside the highest spire, and the deflection field only stops half of its effect, while melting plasma falls onto the troops and demons below, sending them all to hell, screaming in joy or terror as they melt in burning fires. The silence is not strong enough for a 3rd vortex warhead to be used safely, but I'm in no rush. I record everything on my implant, while my fleet fires thousands of plasma torpedoes at the defending Dark Eldar army. I don't care how strong a Psyker is, while bombarded by Tyranid silence and 1,000 tons plasma torpedo, his mind will crack and so will his Psyker shields. Well, except one huge mandrake who tanks 5 torpedoes before he dies. Must have been their boss or something. As durable as a Navy cruiser, so possibly on par with a Demon Prince. I don't really care though. My corvettes have 20,000 torpedoes to spend, and we're barely using 10% for now. I direct a wing of 100 corvettes to unleash a sequential barrage on the tallest spire. Not at once, because the most warheads will get vaporized in the previous explosion. There is no rush, anyway. I have all the time in the world, and a silent sister whispering hot promises in my ear. How do you like the show, guys? I asked to make sure. Looks great from up here. Probably quite nasty at ground level though. Raven quips with a snort. The Tyranids are eating well today. Ludvius observes in a calm voice. They are, huh? Poor creatures. Coming all the way from distant galaxies, just to serve as actors in my picked show. I bet a throne my kids will love this recording. I comment in a wry voice. Which throne would that be? The chaplain interferes at my heresy. Raven flips a sliver coin and holds it up. One throne coin, Lord Pef. But all your kids must love it. The Astartes demands, waving the coin like it was made of spirit stones or something of value. What's not to love? Should I add some orcs in there? I ask in a naive voice. No. Everyone on the bridge yells in terror. Probably a good idea then. Necrons? I ask in fake innocence. That's even worse, Captain. stop talking while you're ahead. Brother Ludvius advises me and pats my head in a familiar gesture. I pat Canis on his head for comfort, while we wait for the damned dimensional field to break. The Eldar cruisers keep lancing everything approaching our formation, creating a rather powerful barrier of light and antimatter. We fire plasma and lances as well, and I keep stealing sleep bombers and fighters, as soon as they leave their underground launch bays. Every one of these babies would be worth 1 billion thrones, sleek and nimble death machines with millions of years of advanced technology hidden under the spikes. One day humanity will have such nice fighters too, but for that I need some respite to grow my kingdom in relative peace. Technology is a hard quest, and religious restrictions do not help. As it happens, the Tau and the Dark Eldar are the easiest enemies to defeat, due to their localized concentration. Sadly, most of the Tau stuff is only on par with the Astartes' weaponry and armor, or even below, not to mention the Mechanicus. Some Mechanicus deck is almost at Necron levels, Alta they of course forgot how to make them or even how to power them up. The Tau instead create things on a logical progression, getting better every year. The Tau still need to grow and discover more nice stuff, to be worth a raid from myself. Hopefully anti-chaos and anti-Necron weapons. That would be great. I will have to arrange they meet and fight more often. A dozen thoughts course through my mind, and Mr. Primarch Khan is right there in top 3. Sure, the guy is not a brainiac, evident by his very actions. Then again, he would be rather useful in stirring things up, especially very far from my own interests in the fringe. The bad part though, this guy is a moron. The first thing that goes through his head is I am the sword. And then off with your head. I kinda like my head where it is. Using the Mu implant, I contact my juggler biologist Margus and have him prepare a sedative capable of pacifying an enraged Astartes, plus another Mu brain drilling operation team, plus something to keep the guy breathing once all those combat drugs wear off. Then I send Fidelia to the Medicae lab to provide enforcement. Once everything is in place, Jagatai Khan arrives in the room to receive a paralytic spray in the face. No weapons of course, because the guy is lethal enough. He even manages to punch Juggler halfway into the next room. And Juggler is very good, I have seen him scoop out the brain of that traitor Marine in a millisecond. Then, Khan falls on his face, and Fidelia places him on the operating table. There must be 10,000 white scars on his body, and inside as well. Makes you wonder how he survived till now, but Primarchs are bullshit, everyone knows that. Doesn't look like one now, merely a battered gladiator in leather pants. Half of those too. I return to watching the show, just as the last 100 plasma torpedoes detonate and collapse the defensive barrier around the high spires of Camorra. Thousands of high-level nobles are forced to enter combat beside their bodyguards, massacring demons with ease. But I want my full set, so a few more Archons and their retinues get captured in my labyrinth. All except 2, Astrabael_Vecht and Aurelia_Melis. Where could they be? Hidden in some sub-dimension maybe. Well, anyway there is plenty of looting here, artifacts from hundreds of species, though most of them are Eldar and human. I even find an empty tesseract, which is quite funny. They could have stopped my assault easily with it, if they knew how to use it. Their loss, my gain. I could make it my Lancefire's clan treasure, after I taught Victor how to use it intelligently. Managing the defense and safety of a small kingdom would be a piece of cake with such a tool, even if assaulted by Orcwas or Tyranids hives. Also, one of those chronophagic blades, and the clan would be set for the next 40,000 years. This was the great advantage of a blank dynasty. I wouldn't need to fear my heir falling to chaos or getting ensorcelled. Sure, stupidity or fanaticism could always strike, even the best of us, even me at times. So far, his Astartes bodyguard had kept him safe from plots or assassins, which was also good. Soon enough, his brothers will be Astartes as well, and that will count for something. Coven by coven and army by army, the Dark Eldar slowly get decimated by the three-pronged attack, and in some places demons and Tyranids began to meet and devour each other as well. We don't have troops on the ground, because I'm not that stupid, and there is no need. I can loot whatever I want, from my captain's chair. All batteries, focus fire on the nearest warp rift. I demand out loud. While the Tyranids are numerous enough to devour any world, demons are infinite. Better not play it too close. The Eldar observe the change in focus and turn their lances on the forward rift as well, which helps close it quite fast. Then again, they have an avatar and the Tyrannid silence is suppressing the warp to some degree. The remaining Dark Eldar ships turn their attention on the warp rift to their back, which makes some sense, but not enough. I do want a large armada of advanced ships, so their cruisers also begin to vanish now, leaving only the smaller ships, from which I only collect a dozen per class, just to analyze the technologies. Of course, this leaves the ground armies without cover, and hordes of hive_crones and millions of gargoyles dive on their prey unimpeded. Even a greater demon arrived at the final moment, eager to feast on the well-deserving Drukhari. This finally breaks the Dark Eldar morale, and they attempt to flee and scatter. Tyranids all around though. Exterminatus inbound in 60 solar seconds. All ships retreat. I ordered just as the second warp rift is finally closed, by suicidal self-detonations of a dozen Dark Eldar destroyers. We turn tail and head for the portal, while Kamara becomes a feast for Tyranids and demons. Anyone knows who that is? Just asking, for no reason at all. I say in a gentle voice. Ludvius chuckles and pats Rafn's shoulder. That's Heartslayer, a keeper of secrets. And? I think there's something more to it, and as that avatar plunges straight through the hordes of Tyranids and demons, I think I have tiny clue. Well, the avatar will get a bit burned, but he should be fine I guess. I murmur to myself and Canis. My wolf nods wisely at me, so he agrees. Avatars are tough, something as minor as an exterminatus shouldn't bother him much. Only fire after all. I think I should delay the explosion a little and record more. I mean, who else has recordings of 3 factions of the Eldar race, battling each other in the middle of their ancient capital? And the Tyranids all around, make it even more interesting. The Serenity holds position right at the edge of this dimension, with the Icarus above us and 999 corvettes like a rainbow and honor guard. I'm not sure why I stopped. Logically it made sense to just bomb the place and run away, but it's good that I did. On the other side of that transparent portal, the 2 remaining Archons have circled around to strike from behind, as the Eldar cruisers find out right now. Unseen weapons and dark beams strike those peaceful Eldar cruisers, and they all scatter in panic, losing half their numbers into temporal minefields, and doing little damage, as a thick shadow covers those Archons and their reserve armies. Well, I am kinda caught in the middle now. What to do? I try to extract the Eldar cruiser from beyond that barrier, but the real distance must be light years, not a few kilometers. Corvettes, 10% expenditure, through the portal. I command on a hunch. Beams will not cross over, or else we would be taking fire already. But torpedoes were physical objects. I lean in my chair and target the raised platform with 2 Dark Eldar with the barge's machine spirit, and launch my own warhead among the 2,000 torpedoes volleys from my corvettes. He might be a potent psyker, but this Vortex warhead has a blank logi engine, and thus the Archon doesn't sense the danger, not until it's too late. That shield of his is no protection against a Vortex warhead that can break a battleship in 2. The warp rift splits the reserve army into a few smaller groups, and the rain of plasma torpedoes incendiate and immolate their decorated armors, and then ignites their souls, as their corrupted flesh gets evaporated. Demons pour through the rift, and engage those armies in melee, with little effect except holding them still as more plasma torpedoes rain from above. Those 2 titanic beings are still fighting behind us, surrounded by monstrous aberrations and demented Medusae, while a throng of massive Tyrannid pyrovore bombards the dregs of the Dark Eldar with acid bombs that dissolve flesh and metal. Mountain-shattering blows rain on each other, but the Avatar is made of burning metal, and simply reforms, while the greater demon is made of nightmares and make-believe. There are plenty of nightmares around to empower the creature, and I am wary of my crew getting corrupted. Time to burn it all. All ships advance at speed and bombard that warp rift. I order as I mentally load another incendiary and detonate it near the ceiling of the cave. With a last look at the demolished Camorra, I collected 100 more Azafiend_cruisers and loaded them with the largest Tyrannid organisms still alive, a dozen broodlords and a tyrant among them. Might need them for some ambush, or just in case. I already had several Novals, and those were the most useful and problematic bioships too, being the gravity-tunneling little bastards. Didn't find any STC here, So perhaps that panacea was already saved by my comical STC containers, littering the Ultima sectors on thousands of transport ships and cargo haulers. Hopefully, that caused a million psychers headaches as well. The last Archon was still running, already a dozen kilometers away, when the Serenity crossed over, but she wasn't faster than a Tesseract. Lady Malice joined my collection, frozen in a desperate rictus. Or perhaps it was excitement. Hard to say with the sadistic Dark Eldar. She did have a lot of great loot though, including some kind of super powerful pistol called a blaster. It shot dark light, so it might pierce through battleship-grade armor. Like I said, good stuff. Might need to disguise the shape into a more imperial weapon, using molded resin or plasteel, but just in case the traitor Primarch showed up, I wanted a surprise. I named it Chekhov's gun, for old time's sake. A recon drone entered the burning dimension to send a short transmission, confirming those two monsters were still fighting each other among the ruins of Camorra. Oh well, I could sell tickets to that epic fight. Right? My two capital ships and the corvettes kept bombarding the rift for an hour until it closed. Of course, we could have sent a sister for the same effect, but the floor of the webway was crawling in demons and Drukhari and mandrakes and all kinds of exotic or dangerous creatures. I mean, their personal weapons were rated to shred an armored tank, so risking a precious blank, even in power armor, wasn't an option for me. Instead, I headed towards the biolab, flanked by my angels and two apothecaries from the Lamenters. Khan was waking up and screaming his lungs out. Probably in need of more combat drugs of Dark Eldar make. Must have made someone a lot of revenue with this simplistic look at the world. Release me at once. The Primarch shouted and struggled against his adamantium binders, just when I entered the lab. Next time he screams, punch his throat. Perhaps later, we confuse his jaws and remove his vocal cords? It's not like he has anything wise to say. I asked from the jugular, who clicked his scalpels in anticipation. Of course, Captain. Such beasts are better used to pull plows. The Mechonicus Magus replied in a right tone. You are Astartes? What legion? The Primarch demanded in a command voice. One of those legions who kept their duty, unlike you, Primarch Khan. You abandoned your Emperor-given duty, and now it is my right to pass sentence. Do you deny the charges? I ask in a pleasant voice and hold my hand to my right, where an apothecary is carrying the Blade of Office, a relic called Glaive and Carmine. It is quite heavy, the blade and my duty. You would execute a Primarch? The guy yells in surprise then chokes as Jugular taps his neck gently with a mechadendrite. I've killed the Primarch before, one named Lorga. What's such a big deal? Anyway, respond to the question. For the charges of dereliction of duty, how do you reply? I demand in a sterner voice, blade gleaming in my hands. A few seconds pass, as lucidity and face of certain death appears in his eyes. The man sighs and lowers his head in remorse. Guilty as charged. My legion, the chapter now. I abandoned them, to pursue vengeance. Well then, perhaps death is not the best punishment, if the accused can be redeemed. I return the weapon to the apothecary, and step closer. I wasn't asking about one chapter, Primarch Khan. You are an Astartes, and your duty is to defend humanity. As a Primarch, you were given authority over the Imperium, because these naive idiots needed someone to direct them wisely. And what wisdom will they find, in your actions? A beastly gladiator, pumped full of Dark Eldar combat stimulants? Howling at the ceiling, like a raging beast? I ask rhetorically, as I gesture at my jugular to release the thick adamantium shackles, binding the brute to the operating table. I wasn't thinking straight. The giant mutters as stands up, and rubs his wrists. Ludvius, stay with the idiot and teach him the canticle of unceasing service. 1,000 repetitions in solitary confinement, afterwards. I'll have to think for an appropriate penance, in the meantime. I demand gruffly as I turn away and leave the lab. Fidelia runs after me and holds my hand for comfort. As I return to the bridge with the elevator, Rafn checks me over in admiration and perhaps worry. You were ready to slice his head off, just like that. An Emperor-given Primarch. He says in a tight voice. We are in the webway now, Astartes Rafn. Here, I speak with the voice of the Emperor, as I do anywhere outside the Imperium. As for Primarchs, In my eyes they are all guilty. Abandoning their duty as a capital crime for any Astartes, correct? I explain in a grave voice. Rafa nods slowly, as he reasons the imperial law and the facts of the matter in his mind. Primarch Khan will not forget this day, Captain. The veteran Astartes mused to himself, and perhaps as a tangential warning. He better not. Next time Khan goes astray, I will not spare his life. I say harshly and then draw Fidelia into a side hug, since she seems a bit overwhelmed by the events. My apothecaries are also quite confused, as the events are a bit beyond them. Let's hope the lost Primarch will regain his sanity with a canticle. It works wonders for the Lamenters, just like you have promised, Master Lancefire. One of them says in a hopeful tone. I couldn't do much for the remaining Lamenters of the older generation, but try to fortify their corrupted minds with a canticle, and avoid sending them into melee combat. The experienced Lamenters will be needed for a time, as teachers and instructors for the new generation getting implanted right now. In a few decades, perhaps use them in a last stand somewhere, to defend a bastion of humanity, and erase the warp curse completely, with their blood. Pay another gene tithe maybe, with their corpses. The Emperor would approve, like he always did. But if not, he could always say something, or send me an angel. My next target shall be the Ultramarines and the Dark Angels, gifting them a few companies of blank suns, to prevent their manipulation by warp using Piscas and Chaos forces. Wouldn't be as easy to convince these chapters, unless I had a Primarch by my side. More bone staffs will be needed, as mind shields against Catan or other empathic users. Sadly, blank powers were not perfect, and various mind abilities were not restricted to psychers. Even the Tau Ethereals had some type of empathic powers, and they were blank themselves. The navigators themselves were proof of this, some of them being able to cover a ship in a self-made Geller field, and protect their passengers through the warp when the generators failed. I could also try to repurpose a null_rod for this staff, and give warp and mental protections to chapter masters. I only found a couple though, even in the vast treasuries of the Dark Eldar. Must be pretty rare indeed. But surely, some old and experienced artificiers or Mechonicus tech priests must know how to make more. Lack of reason was still rampant in the Imperium though, and such artifacts were not commonplace among generals or admirals or even chapter masters. Possibly the Inquisition itself was suppressing their manufacture, for their own purpose. Most likely to maintain their secular power over the Imperium, as the only demon or psyker hunters. Where to now, Captain? My XO-aunt asks as I return to my captain seat. We continue onwards. There are dozens more dimensions and subsections of the Camorra, and billions more dark creatures to exterminate. It would be a pity to return home without spending the torpedoes. I explain patiently and urge the Serenity towards the direction I've seen Lady Malise flee. We cross into the quarter named the Sprawls and begin bombarding the pitiful refugees fleeing from our raid, while I rescue millions of slaves and thousands of precious artifacts. Tyranids are hounding at the heels of these parched, poor Drukhari fallen from grace, or luckier witches and incubi who are faster at running away. Not fast enough, obviously. From here, we scout a dozen more portals, one leading to the still-burning Port Carmen. I pick the next route, which leads to River_Caides. A green river crosses this quarter, bubbling with green pollution and filled with drifting corpses. Another portal leads to a smaller section called the Pandemone, where another small army lies in ambush. They have more ships and pain engines and a million war beasts. I do confiscate a couple battleships and a score of cruisers, just to fill the ranks with my Dark Eldar collection. Not sure how I will control all these Xenos, but the Drukhari battleships can surely be plated in plasteel and adamantium to give them an imperial look, then have warpless engines installed on them. Big hulls are hard to build for any race, and this would provide me with a segmentum large battle fleet once they are refitted for human usage. The treasuries of the Thorn Lords were all filled with gems and gold and countless weapons, even a dozen STCs in bad repair. This is the greatest find, for myself. Not fake STCs like I make, but actually real relics from the Dark Age. Astartes armor in old patterns, anti-grav speeders with strange laser cannons, even some curious floating tanks painted in silver-grey patterns. Those might be silent sister vehicles, I suspect. Plenty slaves to rescue as well, So I get a collection of 100 alien species in my labyrinth, from spiders to worms and mollusks and cyborg monkeys. I even find a dozen blanks among the millions of humans, which is curious. What use would the Dark Eldar have for blanks? Well, beside researching how to secure their souls from sludge. However, the defenders are resisting the attacks well, even after their shields collapse under a stream of torpedoes and lances. Well, I don't actually need to fight them head-on. I deposit a couple Tyranid bioships on top of them, then turn the fleet around as the Thorn Lord's troops are forced to engage the hungry Tyranids. Meanwhile, I prime another Exterminatus and engulf the cave in fiery screams and melting brimstone just as we leave. Another excellent plundered dimension. There should be more though. We turn back and enter a place called Night Soundgullen, an underdark city filled with pain and misery. I fail to find anything to loot here, but I exterminate the place anyway. Nothing shall remain to come back for. Then we pass through another portal and reach a shadow-filled dimension, crawling with mandrakes and other shadow creatures. Must be the Alendrak, if my lore is correct. I can't actually grab anything, as objects seem out of phase. Lasers still set fires, so that's enough for me. We bombard the place with plasma and lances, and then scour the mists with the Exterminatus grade incendiary. I'm not sure how the Mechonicus makes this beauties, but everything burns, from shadow spiders and their silk, to monstrous mandrakes covered in black shadows. It is true, fire is the great equalizer. Then we pass through Zayamvar, a sort of fortress and taxation district, and collect the last of the kidnapped slaves, and their bounties, while we demolish the defenses with another barrage of torpedoes and lances. I rescue thousands of women from Adepta sororitas, not all from militant orders, hundreds of imperial priests and nobles, some navigators and astropaths, and 1,000,000 guardsmen of 100 regiments, not all of them salvageable. Sure, more Katakans will be great, and even Cadians or Valhallans. They probably only lost due to poor equipment and retarded leadership. And then we stumble on the most fortified sector on the Camorra, called Kane_S_gate. I doubt the avatar of Kane will want me to ruin his namesake. Plus, there should be a gate into the warp at the end of this cavern. However, among the defending troops, I scout another Archonvect, looking a bit terrified, despite all the bodyguards and prepared defenses. I grab him from among a troop of harlequins, and all his court and courtiers. I hear pounding, Captain. Like something is trying to break inside the webway. Chaplain Delos announces as his eyes start bleeding. Elena, pat the chaplain's head while he recites the canticle. I command as I lean on my bone staff and reach towards the nicest dressed harlequin. You defend the Cane Gate, from she who thirsts? I ask to make sure. We are, human from outside the play. The creature answers in a painful voice, like 1,000,000 screeching sounds mingle in my mind. For this duty, you will be spared. Cain himself is here, having fun with some big demon. So long, and see you at the end of times. I proclaim in a fake cheer, then turn the fleet around. No point destroying the place and letting the warp infest the webway, and thus flood thousands of worlds with streams of demons. As we trace our course back, we massacre millions of fleeing Dark Eldar that have escaped our pogrom, and millions of Tyranids chasing after them. I might have messed things up a little. I better clean up the mess I left, before the other Tyranids get drawn into the webway. These alien creatures emanate some type of psychic call, drawing others of their kind to a nice food source. Intersection by intersection, we trace our steps by another routes, while I collect Tyranid bioships and exterminate fleeing Dark Eldar and chasing Tyranids. This takes weeks of hard work that I made for myself. Well, it made sense at the time, blocking passageways with hungry Tyranids. Shouldn't have expected them to stay put though. Poor guys were awfully hungry after all. However, chasing after stream of Tyranid bioforms leads my fleet into dozens of new sub-dimensions, because these cute fellows can smell prey and blood from 1,000 kilometers and keep track of wounded Drukhari without fail. They do make great hunting dogs. Of course, I rotate my officers in the captain's seat, to give them all more experience in fleet maneuvers and webway navigation. A dozen blanked daughters already have a pilot badge, and a barge is much slower than a starfighter. I can't wait till I have a few thousand of such daughters or maybe granddaughters, to captain all my ships. especially those ships not yet discovered. By the third week, the found Primarch has recovered enough to walk around, dressed in a white robe as a sign of penitence. I mostly ignore him, except as meals and debriefings, where Khan is invited due to his status but only allowed to listen. His advice is not required, not wanted. I trust my own judgment, and I do have advisors, maybe too many. Even my nurses think they could run a battle fleet inside the alien webway. The tech priests all want to get their tentacles all over the Xenos machines and biowarfare organisms, and disregard my questions about quarantine and safety protocols. So, their lack of common sense ensures they don't get to touch anything. The juggler is the most displeased among the tech priests, even after collecting enough gene samples from Mr. Khan to create an entire new chapter. We can solve your quest for knowledge easily, Margus. You jump outside from my armored warship, and have all the fun you want with the creatures below. No need for safety protocols. You have 5 seconds to agree. 4, 3. I tell him after he retracts his tentacle from a certain orifice. He is my personal doctor too, and isn't that worrisome? The biologist Margus grumbles something in Binharak and sanitizes his mechadendrite in disgust. I like the shields and armor around me, he explains in a pleading voice. And I like my crew healthy and not infected with a billion pathogens and bioviruses from a million insane homunculi. One day, I will build you a biolab on an airless moon, in an unpopulated star system, armored in blackstone 10 meters thick, with a cyclonic torpedo under it, that needs a red button to be pressed every hour, to stop the already primed detonation. And that button keyed only to your still breathing person. Then, you will get to experiment with these captured creatures, one at a time, until you forget to press the button or something eats you, and finally the exterminatus erases your stupidity from the gene pool. I explain patiently. That seems absurd. I can deal with any pathogen. The idiot savant claims in denial. You're right. It is too little, right? Make that a virus bomb first, then a vortex warhead, and lastly the cyclonic torpedo. That should take care of every security risk. Perhaps I can find a way to make the star go supernova too. I muse to myself in real concern. Juggler blinks at me and tries to find the joke, but I'm not joking at all. You're too paranoid, Lord Peth. Not so many planets have been destroyed by investigating too deeply into the mystery of the Omnissiah. Thousands at most. And then, we should add a black hole weapon to sink everything into a gravity well. Not many things can climb out from that. It worked on Fulgrim too. I continue in a casual voice and go to play with my wolf a little. He needs love too. You threw Primarch Fulgrim into a black hole? That sounds intriguing. The idiot mutters as he exits my rooms, and dodges around Primarch Khan. The other idiot has good hearing though. Fulgrim as well? Khan mutters in dismay as he sneaks elegantly into my room. I only helped from the sides in that event. Lady Justine, my blank mother, was the main protagonist. And Sanguinius helped as well. Not in the flesh, as his corpse is now held by the Blood Angels, in stasis. Just a psychic construct in his image. Healed my wrist too, so it almost paid off my mother's sacrifice. So, you made up your mind? I asked curious. Yes, Lord Lancefire. I'm thinking to lead a crusade into the Maelstrom. I've read about your own exploits, in the Badab War. The folly of the Mantis warriors is on me, for my absence. The Primarch says in a gentle tone. A crusade, huh? It would fail horribly, and waste even more ships and troops for no gain. Why a crusade? I ask instead. The Lamenters sacrificed most of the chapter to end the Badab rebellion, and you haven't even been granted a noble title on Terra, even though you risked your clan's personal ships and armsmen to aid the Imperium. I will use my son's blood to wash off the shame. The idiot explains in a retarded logic. How about this? What use are arid worlds filled with Xenos or cultists? Who will live there or defend them, while our enemies burn hive worlds and plunder our forges? You and those chapters willing to listen to your amazing genius as a Primarch, start reinforcing hive worlds and forge worlds with orbital defenses and thousands of ships each, while the local army units receive those weapons and tech priests they need to secure the surface. You saw those torpedo corvettes, right? Easy and cheap to build, and 1,000 of them can launch 20,000 torpedoes at any invading fleet, be they Tyranids or Orcs or traitor legions. Build Gela generators in every city, to keep warp intrusions at the minimum. I comment in a dismissive voice. Crusades? What for? The Imperium is crumbling under his feet, and he wants to conquer even more. But what about you? Didn't you crusade as well? He asks in confusion. A rogue trader has different priorities. Plunder and loot like gems and thrones, captured ships and weapons, liberated slaves or serfs and convicts turned into servitors. Everything I plundered and liberated from those pirates and criminals keeps my clan rich and safe, because we can now defend a dozen worlds in the fringe much easier. And then, there is the STC for Macarius pattern drives, which allow the largest human ships to travel without entering the warp. I heard Forge Angstrom tries to repair the ancient template and allow even large cruisers the same benefit. I explain while diverting his attention from my actions. I never heard of those drives. Even just on battleships and converted conveyors, are they really that common now? He wonders in amazement. I wouldn't know. I did hear of a dozen forges building those drives, but then both my Lancefire clan and my new chapter are mostly isolated in the eastern fringe, surrounded by orcs and Tyranids, Tau to our south and Necrons farther north. I explain in vague terms. It isn't actually that bad, or at least not until more Tyranids arrive and Necron awaken. And these Eldar? You made an alliance? He asks in a worried tone. Just followed them to Camorra. I sort of convinced their avatar to lead the way and bear the brunt of the assault, in return for not blowing up more craft worlds. Worked quite well, and we didn't even get betrayed. Anyway, I do have a warrant of trade, so it's my right to deal with Xenos as I please. Not by chopping Eldar heads one by one, instead burning their whole corrupted city to the ground. Not that anyone is going to repay my costs, the spent torpedoes and fuel and the lost corvette. I mutter and fake rogue trade agreed. I shall arrange you receive a battle cruiser instead, Lord Lancefire. And double your expenditure in ordnance. 40,000 torpedoes, for your service to the Emperor. The Primarch proclaims in a glorious voice. I smile sweetly, as my good mood suddenly returns. 40,000 reasons to smile, so why not? With a Nova cannon. And 100 Nova shells. I did spend all my precious munitions blasting away at the traitor Astral Claws and the Tyrannid Hive fleet attacking Suta. I barter with my familiar demeanor of a slimy trader. Yes, 100 Nova shells it will be. Are we returning to Suta now? Khan inquires in a lower voice. Probably next week. Still need to burn down everything related to the Dark Eldar, and cleanse the tunnels of the Tyrannid infestation, before they reach humans' worlds. Damn tunnels go everywhere into the galaxy, even Terra and Cadia. Someone should work on closing those gates before something nasty crawls out. I say in a warning voice and point at the door. Khan has a mind implant now, so he can understand a command that most dogs can. I shall return next week, Lord Lancefire. And I shall consider your advice. Or was it an order? He asks to make sure. Only the Emperor can order an Astartes, Primarch Khan. Let me know if he speaks to you. I answer in a cheerful voice and power up my cogitator. Time to work on those STCs, and derive 100 more slightly better templates. Ludvius escorts the Primarch as he leaves, and Raven stays to watch me work. Well, he kinda has to stay as my personal bodyguard. After this week passes, we meet up with one of the Eldar cruisers roaming around, and simply ask politely for an escort back to Suta, lest we roam at random and perhaps reach some sacred Eldar Exodite world, by mere accident. A minute later, their captain agrees to our wonderful offer and leads the way to our destination. Not sure if he got my meaning, or the Avatar told them to. I could trust my luck and try to navigate blindly, but fate works in mysterious ways and would possibly throw me in front of a Hive fleet or a Chaos fleet or a Hood migration. The Tranquility awaits us beside the portal, the mangled prow barely repaired after the battleship had been extracted from the remains of the Orc Space Hulk. Sure, the prow is hermetically sealed now, and there's a mechanical Gela generator right behind the armor, so warp travel is quite safe. The noises and other warp emanations have mostly been controlled as well, with several Gela field generators working non-stop. The hull and machinery are functional, but sadly infested or possessed by whatever figments of imagination or living nightmares manifested during the long voyages through the warp. It would be safer to scrap it, and reforge the metal again, but a new battleship would take millennia to build by my small forge, if indeed possible at all. Retribution is building simple tanks and slightly more advanced fighters, and that won't change for at least a century. We're on the bottom tier, and will need to grow a technological society from ground up. Most likely by stealing basic science, and advanced science too, from our town neighbors to the south. What humanity has forgotten already, they are discovering right now. And not being too cautious about who gets to learn and use their technology, even allowing conquered humans in their military. I already have plans to use that to my advantage, by donating them bits of Eldar and Dark Eldar equipment, even Necron or Orc machinery that appears somewhat easier to engineer and reproduce. While a few millions of tech priests chant and pray and anoint machines in complicated rituals, just to get a simple tank to start, the Tau are already building advanced battlesuits with energy shields, and battleships with formidable railgun batteries. Sure, they still have lots to work on ship engines and void shields or Gela generators, that can be arranged to happen much sooner. My corvettes are deployed and arranged defensively as we approach the Aegida. For some reason, the Inquisition makes me nervous. And I have Rosetta myself. Pef Lancefire, you have a lot to explain. My Rose speaks on the Vox channel reserved for highest priority. There is no invading force around, not even a sneaky Eldar scout. My beloved has also returned, probably not long ago. We better talk in private. I answer curtly and raise from my captain's seat. Are we blowing them up too? My aunt asks to make sure, and her question makes the giant Khan cough in surprise, or perhaps warning. Nah. They are not traitors, only brainwashed zealots. I'll sort them out. I declare in a confident voice as I walk out the door. I will sort them out, somehow. I left that word out, because confidence is essential in a commander. Even if you feel like hiding in your room. Thus, I wave out my bodyguards and bring the pretty Inquisitor in, with a simple twist of the labyrinth. So easy. You have indeed changed, just like the reports said. Acting without reservation, ignoring procedure or the law. Stealing prisoners. Dealing with Xenos too. My Rose declares in an accusing voice. Hello, my love. You look a bit tired. I answer instead, and offer a hug. She glares at me for a minute before relenting and accepting my embrace. You better have a solid adamantium alibi. Blackstone even. Rose mutters in my neck. So she did notice the protective armoring around my rooms. Obviously she did, her psycho powers would be restricted even more. What could I say? I took the fleet to Kamara, burned the place down. An entire race exterminated. That glowing light bulb on my bridge is Primarch Khan. He rode back with me, so to say. I don't have horses on the ship. I explain in a small but level voice. She blinks as her hand points towards the bridge and tries to find some words to say. A Primarch, and burning down all of Kamara. Yes, that would be a solid alibi. Is this new ability of yours from that Catan in the Pharos? She asks in a wary voice. I shake my head gently. Something completely different. Just keep in mind, what I am learning to do, others have done for millions of years. The Eldar came with an avatar of Cain on board. Do you even know how potent such a being is? Rose nods hesitantly. I know of them. Is that your hidden trade partner? She asks me in worry. Oh no. Last I saw it, the Avatar was fighting a gigantic keeper of secrets in the burning ruins on High Kamara. Both of them took my exterminatus head on, and ignored it. That Avatar, he is my next trade. Maybe the greater demon too, if I can find a buyer. I supply a time and a place, and I name a price. Perhaps another ancient STC, like the Warplus drive was. Perhaps an STC device that can close the Hadex anomaly. I whisper in her ear, and she goes deathly still. All those ships, appearing near Forge Worlds, it was you? Or rather, someone that can find them and just move them in an instant, Rose murmured in slight amazement. You know, not everyone is mortal, in this universe. The Eternals, like Primarch Vulcan for example, they simply cannot die. Others, like those traitors Primarchs, might get resurrected in the Eye of Terror. Eldar avatars return from death riding those infinity circuits, till the universe loops around. Dark Eldar Archons can resurrect via blood sacrifice. Some Necrons overlords simply enter a new timeline, and climb inside an undamaged body. I even heard of an orc boss getting resurrected. I continue in a more somber voice, and sit on my adamantium chair while Rose sits in my lap. Not yet time for love, but some explanation is needed. It is even true, from a certain point of view. What does it have to do with our situation? Primarch Khan is alive and well, right? She wonders in a deep frown. Our Emperor is an Eternal too. I suspect the Primarchs are simply slivers of his own abilities, separated into clone bodies with different attributes. They cannot really die, just like those living saints that the ecclesiarchy makes. Well, their method is flawed and probably heretical, but all things involving the warp are. I say in a softer voice. Deflect the ire towards others, always works. The Imperial cult is summoning demons? The Inquisitor growls in anger. Now. Not everything is the warp is demons. The Astronomicon beacon is in the warp. So is that Pharos beam, and there's nothing demon-related with it. There is a whole sea of creatures in there, from void whales the size of planets, to enslavers and whatever else. From what I know, the Emperor himself is carving out a place for humanity in the warp, or rather said for their souls. The Mechanicus are doing the same with the machine spirits, using cloned human parts to bind the machine souls to the Emperor, for safety against warp intrusions. But unlike the Emperor or the Forge, the ecclesiarchy are not ahead of the Aquila. See the problem? I asked rhetorically. The Emperor kinda stepped inside that machine god poo by trying to be too smart, and fool the cargo cult on Mars with his psyker abilities, even using temporal spells to undo the damage taken by some battered knights and titans. The joke was on him, as his body rots on the mechanical golden throne and his mind is immersed into the datasphere, hearing every single machine canticle and maintenance sermon uttered by the trillions of tech priests in the solar system. He now is the machine god, but I don't think he likes it. Technically the Inquisition has existed before the Imperial cult, and Rose has to know this. Whatever schooling they receive, probably that information was deleted and expunged, if I think on this again. And to think I tried to find a living saint for your bed. Plan cancelled, forever. Rose declares in a disgusted voice. I do need more silent sisters. Thousands more. I demand in a needier voice, and kiss her ear gently. Get out of that armor, right now. I will claim a long interrogation. My beloved demands in a needy voice as well. Excellent. All according to plan. Too bad about that living saint though. A lover who could fly, like living saints can, would have been totally awesome. Maybe in the next life.